Welcome to the programme. I'm Nima Aboualde. A lack of basic services like access to clean water, sewage systems and reliable power are part of the reasons that led to the revolutions that we saw across North Africa over the past couple of years. But uprisings and slow transitions have meant that many projects that were supposed to make people's lives easier haven't gotten off the ground. And this week we asked one of the world's biggest infrastructure companies what's holding up progress.
In Egypt, it's money. In Libya, it's politics. In Algeria, it's bureaucracy. In Tunisia, it's a combination of this and that.
Also coming up this week, resource hopes. Will Lebanon's plans to tap potential oil and gas reserves pay off? Bullion business. We go behind the scenes at the firm turning this into this.
And something's brewing. I'm in Israel to find out how they're getting a taste for locally made beer.
But first, to Lebanon, a country with very few natural resources, which can be problematic for the government and its people. Parts of the country suffer from chronic power shortages, and it has some of the highest debt levels in the Middle East. Well, now plans are underway to explore for oil and gas. So what difference could this make if found? Karine Torby reports from Beirut.
Deep under these waters lie unexplored seabeds that hold unknown wealth. For the first time, the Lebanese government is auctioning off the right to search for oil and gas off its coast. And 46 companies are in the running to do that exploration. Among them, energy giants like Chevron, ExxonMobil and Total. For the Lebanese authorities, such interest can only be positive news.
Making Lebanon an oil-producing country is something that definitely have a very, very positive impact on the economy, and I believe we are working and thriving towards establishing more stability to Lebanon and the region, and this would really help by creating opportunities for investors to come and benefit from the resources that Lebanon has.
It's still too early to speculate about the quantities of the reserves, but 3D seismic scans have anticipated the volumes are vast. Delegates at an oil and gas conference in Beirut last year were told Lebanese waters could contain between 30 trillion and 40 trillion cubic feet of gas, enough to produce electricity for Lebanon for 300 years. And this is a key issue, because every day people across Lebanon have to put up with electricity outages because the state-owned electricity company cannot provide enough energy to meet demand. Many homes and businesses rely on private generators to keep the power flowing, a problem that dates back to Lebanon's civil war between 1975 and 1990, which destroyed infrastructure. The government knows oil and gas finds would help produce cheaper electricity. But while there is no certainty until drilling begins, and that won't be for at least 2 or 3 years, the authorities can hardly wait. The Ministry of Energy has already launched a media campaign predicting better times. This poster says that Lebanon will soon have free education for all and free healthcare. There are posters like this everywhere, promising a better future and economic prosperity. Interest in drilling in the Eastern Mediterranean has grown since 2 natural gas fields were discovered off Israel. But it also raised tensions between Lebanon and Israel, which both claim an area of about 850 square kilometers in the Mediterranean. And so, some say it's too soon for optimism.
Basically, to actually have the gas that we are promised to have, it's going to be a long process. We have to always keep an eye on the political process and the security issues, because there is going to be a lot of tense moment when this day will happen, because you have to remember there's a lot of security border has not been resolved between Lebanon and Cyprus and between Lebanon and Israel, and this will leave a lot of pressure.
These are times of regional unrest and sharp internal divisions. The challenge for Lebanon is to ensure calm for a chance to extract the wealth below these waters.
Karine Torby reporting from Beirut there. Now, when the revolutions swept across North Africa in 2011, the people on the streets were demanding not only more jobs and an end to corruption and dictatorships, but also a better standard of living. Now, in these countries, especially outside of the big cities, there's a lack of access to basic services like running water, and improving the situation will take time. So how bad is the problem? That's a question I put to Karim Medouar, the head of African operations at the Water Infrastructure Specialists, Matito.
Many people are deprived from clean, safe water for drinking. This is a fact. And wastewater as well. I mean, there was a figure by the government that 80% of Egypt is not covered by wastewater. So literally, in many areas of Egypt, people are swimming in dirty water.
So what are the biggest obstacles that you face?
Depending on the area. Now, in Egypt, it's money. In Libya, it's politics. In Algeria, it's bureaucracy. In Tunisia, it's a combination of this and that. Infrastructure projects, at the end of the day, it's an expensive issue when you're building water treatment plants or power plants, and it takes time to build. I mean, if you build a major water treatment plant, it takes like 2 years to 3 years to build.
So how much of a priority is this for the governments of the region in North Africa? Let's talk about Egypt. If they do get the $4.8 billion loan from the IMF, which they're currently waiting on, is this going to be one of the first things they tackle?
We're trying to push governments to prioritize these issues and put these projects on top of their lists. They need to deliver the benefits to the people at the end.
What about Libya? I understand your work there has completely stopped.
Approximately 98%. Before the revolution, we had like 150 people in Libya. We were building 30 plants. Prior to the past few months, you don't even have a government to talk to. You don't have a client to talk to. However, there are discussions instigated by the government, the new government in Libya, to continue the work, but has taken a long time.
Let's talk about Algeria now. A very different situation there. There was no revolution. Does this mean there's more pressure on the government to deliver on this front?
Absolutely. And I mean, that pressure enhanced by the Arab Spring. In Algeria, for instance, we are building several water treatment plants there, several desalination plants, large ones, especially in the southern part of the country, where really people have been for decades drinking salty, unsafe water.
Now, you're saying this is very expensive. The governments aren't paying for whatever reason. Is there a different business model to be looked at? Perhaps get the private sector to pay?
To get into such large infrastructure projects, you're talking about the private-public partnerships. There are projects, but I don't think people are very interested nowadays, especially with the devaluation of the currencies and in Egypt, for instance, the Egyptian pound.
But what's the cost of not doing anything?
The cost of not doing it is by far more expensive. At the end of the day, it's not just the health of the people, it's an array of things. It will cost you unrest, civil unrest, that's for sure. Water that is not properly managed, meaning that you are losing a lot of that water could be put in use as in developing new areas, as in developing new agricultures, as in developing new jobs. I mean, everything is based on water at the end.
Karim Medouar of Matito speaking to me earlier. Now, gold has been in the headlines over the past couple of weeks, with prices tumbling by up to 20% to their lowest level in 2 years. And this has been closely watched here in Dubai, which has become a hub for the gold trade. But it's not just about buying and selling here at the city's gold souk. This week we meet a man who's transformed a scrap metal business into a firm that processes and refines billions of dollars worth of gold every year.
In around 2000, Dubai picking up as a center and free trade encouraged people to bring their gold from all around countries here. But there was no people at that time who are specialized in scrap gold or raw gold or mines gold. So we start picking up this business, and we made a small refinery to refine the gold and pay the amount for these people, their value of their gold. So the gold arrives here in Dubai and it will go to the refinery to be refined in pure gold and sold and shipped to customers who are looking for pure gold, mainly banks, consumer markets, jewelry manufacturers. When it arrives here, this unpure gold has to be tested. This is one of our assaying laboratories. Assaying laboratory determines the purity of the gold, regardless whether it's raw gold or scrap gold or refined gold. After melting, we take it to refining, and we have two processes. This is the Aqua Regia operation, also to turn scrap gold to pure gold, and here is the shape of powder, which are be melted into pure. And then we have the electrolysis refining. So that's pure gold, that's 49 gold, 100% gold. After we drop that powder and the electrolysis, it will come here in shape of powder, and then it will be poured into kilobar. Now this is 1 kilobar approximately of pure gold, which are now almost ready to go to the market. After weighing, making sure it's the right weight, then it takes a serial number, and then the company's marks and logos. And the last step, of course, is packing, accompanied with the certificates alone during packing in those 25 kilo package, which cost over $1 million each. Due to high prices of gold, small ingots are very favorable now in markets. So we started this department here for the small ingots. Mostly these items buy for investment-wise, for individuals, for institutions, for banks. We received the gold, for instance, this morning. We refine it. Next morning it's on the plane again somewhere else. We are handling now roughly about 300 tons of gold and about 300 tons of silver every year. So this brought us the new idea to start a big refinery here in Dubai. It's planned to be ready within 18 months. This is considered to be the biggest in the whole area, MENA area, and among the biggest 10 in the world. The gold trading and business is in fact part of our operation. This is our trading room. The recent sell-off, when gold dropped for about $200–250 per ounce, telephones were like crazy, ringing all over, because market is dropping unbelievable. I mean, the price they quote this second is -$10 or -$20 an ounce in the second. So everybody want to catch anything or any order before they miss it. It was really a very deep sell-off day. Hopefully no people got hurt in this big sell-off.
Right, time for us to take a short break now. When we come back, liquid assets. We meet the brewers trying to put the ale into Israel. Welcome back to the programme. I'm Nima Abuwarde. Now, pretty much every designer clothes brand has a presence in at least one of Dubai's glitzy malls, but showcasing the region's fashion industry alongside the likes of Milan, Paris and New York has proved less successful. The Dubai Fashion Week had a checkered history and hit an all-time low last year when it was cancelled altogether. Now, this week a new event takes place to try and replace it. So how will Fashion Forward differ? That's a question I put to its founder, Bon Guerrero.
You really have to round up truly the fashion community. I think this is first and foremost. I think that was potentially lacking there, is that you need to have the right designers, the right audience. You need to at least have the regional buyers in attendance. Not necessarily to buy from first season, but just to observe and monitor. And perhaps that didn't happen. And maybe it wasn't the right time, and right now we definitely have the right designers on board. It's probably the first time that we have unanimous participation from the best. That's number one. Number two, we definitely have the interest and the eye of the regional buyers. They know that this is percolating and they will have to stock them, they will have to support them.
What's holding the fashion industry back here? There have been things like Dubai Fashion Week, there have been other attempts to showcase and get, people buying.
I mean, I wouldn't say holding back. It's all the elements are there. Really, all the great elements to make a regional fashion industry thriving is right at our doorstep. You've got high consumerism. You've got great talent. We're quite advanced. What is lacking really is just the platform that kind of like gather all these elements. And you really almost have to house them under one roof periodically, where the regional market and international audience know where to find them. And that's what we're hoping to achieve with Fashion Forward.
International buyers, what are they looking for? Why aren't they buying from this region?
Buying is a new thing in the Middle East. Retailing in the Middle East is really a 20-year-old phenomena. I mean, it's all new. I mean, I came here 23 years ago, and for ladies to actually meet their sort of like clothing requirements, they go to the souk, buy fabric, and go to their dress shops and have their dresses made. I mean, the Harvey Nichols and the Bloomingdale's came about only 10 years ago, and their focus is primarily on global brands. They give token space to regional designers, but we're hoping that will change, and that will inevitably change if we magnify these designers, if these designers actually up their game, up their production capacities, and obviously their consistency. Fashion retail giants, they want to be able to know that their orders will be met at the right time in the quality that they want.
Bon Guerrero speaking to me earlier. Now let's see what other business stories are making headlines across the region this week. Abu Dhabi's Etihad Airways has bought a 24% stake in Indian carrier Jet Airways for $379 million. It's the first foreign investment in an Indian airline since the South Asian country eased restrictions on aviation deals last year, and will help the UAE firm tap into India's growing travel market. Etihad has been buying stakes in other airlines, including Air Berlin and Virgin Australia. Israel's government has approved a deal to boost airline traffic to and from Europe. Supporters of the Open Skies Agreement say relaxing restrictions and quotas on flights between Israel and the EU will increase competition and help Israel's economy. It was signed despite a strike by workers at national carrier El Al and two smaller airlines who fear it'll cost them jobs. Godolphin Racing Stables, perhaps Dubai's biggest sporting brand, has been engulfed in scandal this week after 11 of its horses tested positive for anabolic steroids. The organisation described the findings as a dark day after Godolphin's head trainer admitted making a catastrophic mistake. It's being seen as hugely embarrassing for Dubai's ruler Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the driving force behind Godolphin, the largest stable in the world. Now, if you went to Israel a couple of years ago and fancied a drink of beer, your choice would be pretty limited to either a big international brand or a mass-market local lager. Well, change is brewing, as Simon Atkinson now reports from Tel Aviv.
With dozens to choose from, beer lovers here are spoiled for choice. This backstreet bar specialises in craft beer, made in fairly small batches by fairly small companies called microbreweries. And while most are from Europe and the US, more and more are being made closer to home.
From the very first day we were started with specialty beers, and in the meantime the local industry started to develop, and now I think in the last 2 or 3 years we have almost 20 different microbreweries all manufacture proud Israeli beer.
And this is one of those breweries. It's been open for a couple of years, and as well as its own brands, does contract brewing too, using its equipment and expertise to make batches of beer for others. And if the brewing setup looks fairly basic, take a look at how they label the bottles. It's a small-scale scene, but one that's being repeated across the country.
It's really making a revolution in the beer in Israel. We are like colleagues, not like competitors. We are supporting each other. We are helping when one needed some materials, he is asking from the others. The intention is to grow. You see there is a lot of empty floor here that can be filled with fermenters and with new equipment. It's becoming a career for me. I cannot live from it yet, but I hope that one day I will.
Perhaps the biggest threat to that career right now is the Israeli government. A new law announced this week will almost double the purchase tax on beer, a big burden for small producers and their customers to carry. Shachar was an early arrival on the Israeli beer scene. He organises beer festivals and sells brewing equipment. He says the tax rise threatens this fledgling industry, but thinks even without it, some microbreweries already have their work cut out.
There's not necessarily room for all of them. They all kind of struggle to, keep head above water. We don't have a good history of making or drinking beer, and this is one of the difficulties that the breweries have. They actually have to create a culture of drinking beer as a thing that is basic and not as something that you only do at a pub at 2 a.m. The consumption of beer in Israel is one of the lowest in the entire universe. There's actually some Muslim countries that drink more than Israelis. This is ridiculous, but this is the situation.
But while there's not a culture of beer, Israel does have a culture of alcohol. Per capita, it's one of the world's biggest consumers of vodka, with a tendency towards sweet drinks. And ale aficionados are catching on to that trend.
Now, despite being locally made, the Israeli beers are some of the most expensive on the menu here. In part, that's because the breweries are very small, they haven't got the economies of scale, but also most of the ingredients, in fact pretty much everything apart from the water, has to be imported. There is some local produce going into some of these brews though. This one, for example, is made with passion fruit that's been grown in Israel. And it's that fruity twist which is proving popular with a lot of the drinkers here. So how do people find Israeli beer?
I think it's great actually. It's nice to go out and drink Israeli beers other than, beers from abroad.
It does have a very special flavor. There's a few really nice beers around. Hope to get to the world market. We'll see if we make a success.
Brewers here need more customers like them. Plenty of enthusiasm and prepared to pay a few more shekels to drink local ale. If they can achieve that, Israel's microbreweries are going to see more ups than downs.
Simon Atkinson reporting from Tel Aviv there. Right, our time is very nearly up. I do hope you've enjoyed our programme this week. Before we go, let's see how the region's main markets performed. And remember, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is middleeastbiz@bbc.co.uk. And if you go to Twitter and Facebook for our latest photos and news from our teams across the world. Now, next week, we're in Lebanon, looking at the country's online efforts to get their fashion designers to more customers. But with one of the world's slowest broadbands is the internet. The answer. Until then, from me, Nima Abu Ardeh, and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.